Hello everybody, and welcome to this webinar presented by Five9 Software and Bitdefender, How to Optimize Security for Virtualized Data Centers. In this session, you're going to hear best practices for protecting your virtualized environment. You will learn how security for virtual machines is different than that in static environments, and how agentless antivirus can give you the fastest performance and easiest management in the industry. Here you'll see how Five9 has optimized the Bitdefender antivirus engine for virtualization, making it the leading security solution for Hyper-V. A couple of housekeeping notes. This session will be recorded, and we will be sending out a copy of the recording after the event. Additionally, please feel free to ask questions throughout this event through the panel on the right. We have a team of people from both Bitdefender as well as Five9 available to address your questions. And at the very end of the session, we're going to do a live Q&A. So please ask your questions throughout, and please make sure that you stay to the end, where we'll be happy to verbally discuss some of those questions as well. Let me introduce our presenters. From Bitdefender, we have George Uenup. He's a senior software developer. He joined the company's OEM licensing unit in 2008 after working at Kaspersky Lab for several years. Aside from developing SDKs for various OEM solutions, George is also providing partners and prospects with useful insights into emerging threats and potential pitfalls of technology licensing. Additionally, I am Simon Perriman. I'm going to be the presenter for Five9, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Product Marketing. Previously, I was Microsoft's Senior Technical Evangelist and Worldwide Technical Lead, covering virtualization, infrastructure, management, and cloud. But with that, we're going to go ahead and begin and tell you how you can optimize security for virtual data centers. Over the course of this session, we're going to be talking about the differences in virtual security, Bitdefender's antivirus capabilities and why they're the leader in the industry, and then dive into Five9 cloud security to help you understand how we've taken traditional security and optimized it for virtualization. First of all, let's do a quick introduction to virtual security, because I know that a lot of the people which are going to be attending this are not necessarily security experts. I was in that same situation when I joined Five9. I was an infrastructure guy. I had a lot of expertise in virtualization, and the reason why I was so interested in Five9 solutions is they make security easy for infrastructure guys. You don't need to have a security specialist to be successful in deploying and setting up your virtualized infrastructure security. So let's quickly review what are the different types of threats that you're going to see for virtualized environments, and specifically for Hyper-V. Well, one of the most common attacks we see attacking these virtualized environments is trying to take memory from virtual machines. If one of the virtual machines running on your host can use dynamic memory or an unlimited amount of memory, there are certain different types of applications and threats that just balloon this memory, consume it. And this means that other virtual machines on the same host don't have enough memory to be able to run successfully. So denial of memory, denial of CPU are one of the most common types of attacks we see on virtual machines. Networking attacks are very common as well, and this is how traditional attacks happen, whether it's on a physical infrastructure or more specifically on a virtual machine. If you think about how a threat is actually going to arrive on that virtual machine, it has to travel through the network. So anything which is going to impact access to the network, flood it, limit the amount of bandwidth that those virtual machines can see is going to go and impact that performance. Now, network attacks have become even more prevalent now that a lot of virtualized environments are using Ethernet for their storage as well. Because these networks, these traditional Ethernet-based networks, they can be subject to traditional network attacks. In the past, when people were using storage area networks or SANs to actually host their storage infrastructure, they were less likely to be attacked because they tended to be isolated. So if you're now storing your files over NFS, SMB, fiber channel over Ethernet, or iSCSI, anything going through these traditional networks, those are vulnerable for these traditional attacks. So we want to avoid different things, whether that's a virus, malware, or even denial of service. Now with storage attacks, the biggest type of thing we see are data breaches or loss. I mean, if you've seen the news recently, it's almost every week you hear about a major organization being hacked, information stolen, whether that's used by the bad guys for profit or to discredit the company. So keeping track of the data is very critical, very key. But one of the more common attacks we're seeing now is a denial of data access. Again, for those types of virtual environments that are using traditional SANs or even Ethernet, if there's a flood of data, too many reads and writes going from the virtual machine to the storage infrastructure, it can starve those other virtual machines, slow them down if their read and write time gets hit. So we really want to think about these key computing areas, compute, network, storage, as the most vulnerable types of attacks. Now, the most common type that we've always seen in the industry are attacks on the website itself. Now, if you're in a highly virtualized environment, you probably have your website hosted on virtual machines. Now, if this is the main way that your customers are going to access your products or your services through a website, it's critical that we continue to monitor and protect this as a key part of our infrastructure. But the most common and probably the scariest types of attacks that we're seeing recently are known as APTs, active persistent threats. And this has become so prevalent that even Microsoft's CEO talks about this in his keynotes. And the best way to think about ATPs are advanced threats that are specifically targeting a type of infrastructure, whether that's Hyper-V, Microsoft Active Directory, a Windows Server DNS server. What these attacks are not just brute force attacks, but they're very specifically designed to go and find vulnerabilities if you're using that type of server infrastructure. Now, across all of these can take down any infrastructure, no matter what size you are. So we wanted to put a series of tools together to protect against all of these different vulnerabilities. Now, a lot of people really try to think about security as a response mechanism, but we want to encourage people to be proactive about security. Gartner released a report last year which says most data centers are already infected, and they estimated up to 90% of all data centers have some type of threat. The problem is we just don't know about it yet. Now, there's all different types of new threats that can appear, especially if you're some type of service provider where you're allowing non-technical people access to your infrastructure. Now, as a service provider, that could be a public hoster that genuinely is allowing the public to rent their hardware, or you could be running some type of large internal private cloud. But when you're doing that, you might allow the marketing team or the sales team access to virtual machines. Now, in any of these times where you have non-technical users, you're automatically allowing yourself to be vulnerable because in many cases, users don't really care about their security. They just get annoyed by the constant pop-ups, being asked to do updates, so they generally don't follow best practices. So users are one of the biggest risks in our area. We also see a lot of attacks from storage devices where people might find a thumb drive lying on the ground, go plug it into their data center. That's how one of the United States government's largest institutions was hacked. Somebody just found a thumb drive in the parking lot, plugged it into their laptop, it had a rootkit on, and it went and infected the entire network. And then we've also just got to think about the traditional network attacks. They're constantly changing, constantly coming. But why do people still get these, even if they have firewalls or different types of network analytic devices? Why are threats still prevalent? Well, first of all, threats are constantly evolving. Each day, hundreds of new viruses are being created and deployed, and it takes a little bit of time for them to be detected, analyzed, and for a signature to be created that will allow an antivirus company to go and match that particular threat so that we know exactly what it is. Now, if you're in a large environment, you have people constantly downloading files, it's possible that they've downloaded a brand new threat that we don't even have a matching signature for as well. And that's one of the most common ways that these viruses get in the environment. So it's important to not only do live protection of incoming data, but to constantly be scanning your environment as well, making sure that some type of file that you stored a week ago didn't have a signature that you only just discovered recently. And one of the scariest types of threats that we see that are becoming more common are time bombs and logic bombs. And so a time bomb would be a virus that you downloaded a week ago, and it's set to actually unleash itself and be detected at a specific time. Maybe in the middle of the holiday shopping season, that's when it's going to try to take down your servers to have the most interference. And logic bombs become even scarier. These are slightly newer. And what a logic bomb is when a certain set of conditions are met, only then will the virus launch and cause malicious activities. And this could be something like wait until 100 servers in the environment are infected and only then launch the virus. And imagine how tough that is if a third of your entire data center is already infected before you even know there's a problem. At that point, it's so tough to isolate, to break things off, to separate, and take down the virus that oftentimes it's going to eliminate an entire data center. So we want to put together a suite of tools that are going to protect this entire virtualized infrastructure. You need a firewall. This is going to be blocking the incoming threats. You're going to need antivirus, anti-malware. And this is an area where Five9 partnered with Bitdefender. We didn't want to go and write our own antivirus signatures and definitions. There's a lot of great companies on the market doing that already. So we're leveraging their leading engine. We want to be filtering different types of network traffic so that we could see anomalies as it's coming through, different types of protocols, different types of patterns. And then intrusion detection and intrusion prevention. And this is where we're analyzing the network traffic and trying to go and match it to specific types of attacks or specific types of threats that we see. Now, of course, what we're going to be covering in this session is only going to be focusing on the best practices for securing your virtualized infrastructure. It's important to keep in mind that traditional security best practices are still needed. You know, traditional security, BitLocker, virtual private networks, Active Directory, all of those other best practices that are built into the platform. And the key thing that we're going to talk about or remind you is that security for virtualization is different. So what do we mean by that? Well, if you kind of think about a traditional data center, you might have, let's say, 3 static servers. They rarely change, and so going through the traditional approach of securing them by installing an agent on each individual server isn't too hard. Things don't change very often. The administrator has access to the servers, and usually these physical servers are never running at full capacity. They're usually running, they do a couple of roles, and there's always some additional capacity so that during an antivirus scan, they can spike, they can consume those additional resources, and it doesn't impact the core service that's running on them. When more servers get added to the environment, we just go and install those security agents again. So endpoint security does make sense for these traditional data centers. But once we move over to the world of virtualization, things are very different. Because the environment is dynamic, the VMs are constantly changing. People are deploying them at different times. So going and logging into each and every virtual machine to install security might be pretty hard. It might be impractical. And if you're in a hosted environment, it might even be impossible because certain compliance laws do not allow administrators to actually get access to the virtual machine to go and install those agents. Additionally, those virtual machines are going to be running at close to 100% capacity. One of the benefits of virtualization is to be able to segment each role within an individual virtual machine and maximize its resource utilization. So over the entire data center, each host might be running close to full capacity. And this causes a major problem when we see antivirus scans that are going to go and spike and consume too much memory and slow down the entire infrastructure. So we want to think about a better way to do security for these virtualized environments. Traditional agent-based endpoint security does not work. So Five9's big advantage is we do not require any components to run inside the virtual machines. We take Bitdefender's great antivirus engine and optimize it for Hyper-V, where we're going to be scanning incoming and outgoing network traffic before it even gets to the virtual machine. We only install an agent on the host. Nothing is required to run inside the VM. So for these users which are not interested in keeping their security running, maintaining compliance, they never see the security. They never have to update it. They never have to run scans. And more importantly, they can never disable it, whether that's accidentally or on purpose. Users won't even notice that they have any type of protection when it's agentless. All we have to do is manage things at the host level. So this gives us centralized management and notifications. We can do our updates in one place, and we still get to maintain privacy and compliance by not requiring the administrator to log in to each virtual machine. So this is very advantageous if you're doing VDI, simplify, centralize the management. And all of this is the key feature that's available only with Five9. And I'm now going to turn it over to George.
Hello everybody, thank you Simon, and first I hope we all know Bitdefender, but just for those of you who do not, let me introduce ourselves. So Bitdefender has been in business since mid-90s and was established as a company, separate company in 2001. It's a privately held company headquartered in Romania with 9 offices around the world. We have 700 employees globally. Now more than 300 of them are technical employees. The headquarters of the company is in Romania, and the OEM headquarters is in California, in Santa Clara. And we also have remote offices in Asia, and we have several offices in Europe. The OEM partnership is very important for Bitdefender. As you can see on this slide, we have a quite large number of partners, over 150 partners to be specific. Some of them you can see on this slide. Our main licensing technology, which most of the partner license, is our award-winning anti-malware technology, which is used for malware and threat detection. As you see, it has a major value even for technical companies. If you think about companies like F-Secure, whose core business is anti-malware, it's extremely important for them to have the best anti-malware technology around. And when the company like that partners with Bitdefender using our software for their core business, this gives us a significant boost as a respectable company, because such companies are doing business with us. Of course, we are not alone here. There are many security companies in the anti-malware landscape. We usually separate them by so-called proven companies and unknown companies. So there are over 50, we could call proven anti-malware vendors around here. Most of them have built some in-house detection technology. Either it could be good or bad, but it's their own technology. Some recently licensed technology from different anti-malware vendors, from Bitdefender, but from others too. There are even some free and open source security products which have been around there for a while, such as ClaimAV. And typically for those security companies, they are at least 5+ years in business. There are some companies who've been there over 12, 20 years or even more. On the other hand, every year we see quite a bunch of new security companies each year. I call them security in quotes because at that moment when the company introduced itself, it's typically unknown whether it really has a security product which is able to keep up with threats. And typically for those companies, they have very impressive websites with impressive sounding promises, but unfortunately they do not have track record in the industry, and their solution is usually very hard to evaluate independently, if possible at all. So with so many security vendors to choose, both existing and new, partners sometimes ask us, what would be the best vendor? Is Bitdefender the best? And usually the answer I give to them, it depends on how you define the best. Do you mean its best performance? Do you mean its best detection? Do you mean is the best vendor is the one who has the best sales and more money to put in marketing? Or maybe the best vendor is the one who has the most famous brand? So Bitdefender here strives to have the best detection in the best performance. So we are trying to have the best technology for detection malware. And of course the question is, when the vendor confirms that they are best in something, then you can follow up with the question, so how do I really find out? Because if you check the website, almost everybody claims to be the best in something. Typically in marketing materials, they have quotes from experts in the industry and quotes from some made-up experts in the industry, and they refer to tests. Some of them could be internal, some of them could be of unknown origin. And a typical question we have here is, should we just run our own tests and see which vendor is the best and performs on our collection? And our answer is typically yes, you can do that if you are going to use the technology internally. But if you are trying to license technology for your users, then the test you are running internally may not really be relevant for your users, and the result you get internally may not be relevant, may not represent what your users would get at all. So that's a very common pitfall. Now, if this is running your own test is not good, what should we look at? And let's first check the things which are not important, which should not be looking at if you consider which security solution, which security vendor would choose. The first would be the marketing claims which are not supported, such as I have an example here in presentation. While those could be true, if they are supported by the evidence, those would be valuable information. But if it's just put on a website without any reference, such as why the company believes to have the best protection, then it takes 3 seconds to write down the word best protection and put it on the website, and it has probably as much value. Then there are buzzwords which are very popular now, and you can see them everywhere. While those can describe the actual technology the company uses, and the technology may be itself good and contributing to detection, unfortunately, just because the company has implemented this technology does not guarantee that the company would actually perform and its detection would be good. A good example would be a car which is advertised as having the best tires in the world. It may really have the best tires in the world, but it doesn't mean it would really be the best car in the world, or that it will have even be convenient or have any adequate performance or anything like that. Then, of course, some companies even quote internal test results. This was popular 5 years ago. Fortunately, we don't see it anymore because technically it does not make any sense. Your product, a security product, should detect 100% of malware which you have in your test collection during your internal testing. That's a criteria for releasing your product. That's not something you should put on your website, and it makes no sense bragging about that. Then there are patents. While there is a lot of very valuable patents which protect valuable technology, unfortunately, at least in the United States, the US Patent Office has a reputation of granting patents on everything, including things which are completely useless. I mentioned there is a patent on a cross-shaped USB stick, which is real USB stick, but in a cross shape. And yes, there is a patent for that, and you can check it online. And finally, a pretty useless thing is testimonials. Unfortunately, it has as much value, probably, even if it's real and from the honest user who tries to help or from an expert, it has as much value as internal testing, because though the testimonial, the experience of a single user may not really be relevant for the rest of your users. Now, if those things are not important, what is important? So we would suggest that the only source of the important information would be trusted third-party tests. What do I mean by trusted? By trusted, we mean that those tests come from an independent organization. They are not internal tests. This organization has reputation of being unbiased, and this organization is respected in security industry. Several of those organizations would be Virus Bulletin, AV-Test, and AV-Comparatives. They are run by people who are widely respected in the industry and for their integrity. They are known of taking, for example, never taking money for altering test results. And while they are doing private testing, their public tests are free for everybody, and they publish the results, and those results are verifiable, meaning that for the companies who participate in the test, they publish the test collection after the test. So you can run it, every vendor can run it and see and confirm the results, which makes it very different from various tests you can see around. When somebody claims that a vendor detected 20 viruses, other vendor detected 5, but they never publish the virus collection, so you don't even know if this is even the case. So even when you look at those test results, you need to make sure that the results are continuous, meaning that every company can have its ups and downs, meaning that even for a real security outsider, it may be possible at some time to score better than everybody else. So what you're looking for here is a continuous result which does not have major spikes and major drops. And of course, the company should participate tests for as long as possible. If the company only participates in test once and got good result, and it was 5 years ago, then you only can be sure that their product was good at that moment 5 years ago. It says nothing about the existing product. Of course, very important is to watch out the vendors who do not participate in tests. So if you have a conversation with a security vendor whose technology does not participate in independent tests, there is a good question to ask why why they are not doing that. So Bitdefender has been leading in the independent test consistently, and here you can see the results. We max the vendor due to the legal advice we received, but you can see the actual test results which are available on the links which would be shared. So, and we have heard that those tests are not real. They don't cover the real scenario. And to counter that, we bring you the awards Bitdefender received and some other products received as well. And you can see the award the product was received too. So as you see, they cover a lot of real-world scenarios, such as malware removal, proactive malware detection. And the way the test does proactive malware detection is that they got your software, they freeze the signature updates for 1 month, they collect all the new malware which they never seen before and only has been seen during this month. Then after this month, they try to scan all this new malware with the signature database which was frozen and which is now 1 month old. And this test is called proactive malware detection, because it's supposed to detect how the product would be dealing with malware which was not released at the moment the product was released. And we're very good in those tests. And of course, other tests such as disinfection and threat deletion and so on. And of course, very important aspect of our partnership with Five9 is our commitment to our partners. This would be very important if you, who use Five9 products, have an issue with the product which is related to security. Unlike some free solutions like ClaimAV and others, which have practically non-existent support, and you can wait months for example, adding detection. And I have to admit, even some commercial vendors we are not doing much better. Bitdefender offers full support for its technology to the partner, and we will work with Five9 to resolve all the issues related to our technology. And of course, all this will happen completely transparent to you, and you as a Five9 customer would only have to deal with Five9 support, and Five9 support will reach out with Bitdefender, and we will work together to solve your problem and deliver the fix as soon as is possible. And we hope that this would be the only issue you'd have to reach out to Bit9 support would be the renewal of the contract, and we won't have any other issues, including the security issues. All right, Simon, over to you.
Thanks a lot. I'm going to switch over to myself, and I will begin presenting a little bit more information about specifically what we do here at Five9. So a quick introduction to who we are. Five9 Software was founded in 2009, just after Hyper-V was first launched. And that's one thing that's unique about our organization. We only ever build products for Hyper-V. Compared to some other security companies that will build an all-purpose product or build something for VMware and try to adopt it for Hyper-V, we have only been building for Hyper-V from the ground up. So that gives us a lot of competitive advantages in that we have better integration, better performance, better licensing, and we work extremely closely with the Microsoft Hyper-V engineering team. I myself spent 4 years on that engineering team before I moved over to Five9 Software. So we really do have the best integration available in the business. And we'll talk about some of those benefits a little later on. We're based in Chicago and now have staff in 24 regions worldwide, including 17 Microsoft MVPs. And for those of you that are not familiar with the program, Microsoft MVPs are Microsoft's leading community experts across their various areas. And we partner with one of the largest number of MVPs in the world. So I think that speaks some strength about the value that we're adding and how we are specifically doing our stuff optimized and partnering with Microsoft. We now have almost 100,000 users worldwide across our 3 products, which includes not only the security solution that we're talking about today, but also Five9 Manager, which is a centralized management utility for all of your Hyper-V infrastructure, kind of like a mini version of System Center. Additionally, we have the V2V Easy Converter that allows you to migrate from VMware over to Hyper-V. Here's a quick overview of our global settings, all the different locations where we're available throughout the world, based out of Chicago. Now a little bit more about Five9 Cloud Security. Again, what we try to do was take a look at every vulnerability for Hyper-V and specifically try to address those. And through this, we provide a suite of tools that includes Firewall, antivirus, and anti-malware, available through Bitdefender, intrusion detection, available through Cisco Snort, and a variety of different types of network analytic tools. And we're fully integrated throughout the Microsoft environment, including System Center, Azure Pack, and we're currently working on Azure Stack and Microsoft Azure Public Cloud. Now, we've mentioned before that using agentless security is essential if you have a virtualized environment. So let's explain a little bit about how that works. In this image that you see here, you see the Hyper-V host, and you see several virtual machines that are going to be running on the host. Now, for any type of threat to get to those virtual machines, it has to follow a specific path, going through the physical network to the physical host, through the virtual switch which routes it, and then eventually to the virtual machine itself. So as it's going through this path, this purple box in the middle, the virtual switch, is kind of like a single point of convergence. All of the traffic going into a VM or out of a VM has to go through it, so the north-south traffic is inspected, and even the traffic that goes from one VM to another VM has to also get routed through that virtual switch, so the east-west traffic is inspected. Now the way Five9 works is we have our own kernel-level network driver that's built into the virtual switch. And this allows us to actually see all of the inbound and outbound network packets. So we can inspect it and say, this is safe, or we can inspect it and say, this has a threat. We don't want this to go through. And again, all of this logic exists at the host level. So you install an agent at the host, but nothing is required to run inside the virtual machines. And this also gives an advantage that we see all of this private network traffic going from one VM over to another VM. And traditional network appliances which sit on the physical network, they never see this traffic that never leaves the host. And what this means is if you're using traditional security in a virtual environment, one of your VMs can get infected and infect every other VM on that same host before any type of security alert is detected. Now with Five9, we've essentially put together multiple layers of security. We protect the host with antivirus. We automatically protect virtual machines and networks because any VM that's deployed gets protected by us immediately. We have our virtual firewall that's only going to allow packets through if they meet certain requirements. We have antivirus detection on our network, antivirus scans on the disk, network intrusion detection, network anomaly analysis, and this is also extensible to our different types of analytics systems. So let's go take a look at these in a little bit more detail here. So the first level of protection that we're going to see is our host protection. And it's important that you're actually protecting your Hyper-V host as well. When you're protecting the Hyper-V host, we want to go and make sure that that doesn't get affected. We want to make sure that the Hyper-V host stays clear from all different types of threats, all different types of viruses. Because if you lose your host, that can negatively impact everything else that you have running across your entire environment. Taking down the host can cause you to lose multiple virtual machines at the same time. So it's really critical as you're thinking about your host-based protection to make sure that you're inspecting it, you're intercepting different types of network packets. Now, the second level of protection that we have is automatic protection. And the idea here is that as soon as you deploy a new virtual machine, you want to have it automatically and immediately protected. You don't want to have to go deploy a virtual machine, have it unprotected, and then have it immediately attacked. So this is really essential to make sure that as soon as a new virtual machine or virtual network is deployed, So long as you have 5.9 Cloud Security installed, it's going to be protected. We have a concept of default security groups. So every new VM will get placed in one of these groups and automatically have the security and the protection enabled on it. The third layer of security that we include is our virtual firewall. And essentially what we're doing here is intercepting the network packet and we're inspecting it. We're going to make sure that this network packet supports the right protocols. We're going to make sure that this network packet is going to be allowed to go from the correct source to the correct IP address. And we have a whole lot of other different types of configuration options available too, which are going to make sure that this threat will never actually get to the virtual machine itself. Additionally, one of the big advantages of having a virtual firewall sitting on the host is that we are agnostic of the endpoint of what guest operating system is actually running inside that virtual machine. From our perspective, it really doesn't matter what's running inside the virtual machine because we don't have to install anything there. So this means that if you have a diverse virtual environment, you have different types of virtual machines, which could be Linux, Unix, Windows Server, or Windows Client. You get to use a single unified solution. So this is going to make management significantly easier and allow you to have consistent policies and rules. Now the next section is where Bitdefender comes in, as we start to take a look at antivirus detection. So if we say that this network packet is allowed to go through the firewall, then it will actually go and travel towards the virtual machine. Now what we're actually going to do here is we're going to go and mirror that packet, and we're going to go and scan it. So as we're sending it to the virtual machine, we're also knowing whether it's safe. Assuming that that network packet is unencrypted and supports the protocols we support, we're going to basically do a live scan and immediately alert you if we come across some type of virus. And we have built-in notifications, email alerts, and event logs to simplify this process. Additionally, we have antivirus security scans on the disk as well. So even though we're going to try to block the threat as soon as it arrives, remember, you might have downloaded a threat that has not yet been detected. So it's always important that we go and scan the disks as well. Now, one of the other proprietary technologies from 5.9 is that we have the fastest disk scans in the entire industry. And what this means is we're reducing the amount of impact that those antivirus scans cause on a virtualized environment. Now, by the fact that we can avoid these scanning storms means you're going to get better performance for your hosts. It means you can run more VMs on each host. And this essentially means that you might be able to reduce the number of hosts that you have in your environment simply by switching to an agentless security solution and not having to go and install these security components and run antivirus inside each and every one of your virtual machines. Now, the way this happens with our optimization, we use a technology known as change block tracking. And essentially, this means that we track the blocks of data on the disk which have changed since the last scan, so that we don't have to scan an entire 1 terabyte disk each time like everyone else does. We're just going to go and scan those blocks of data which have changed since the last scan, meaning that we might be able to do scans in a matter of seconds or even milliseconds compared to traditional antivirus, which is agent-based, that might take several minutes or even several hours to scan a large virtual machine. We then continue to enhance our security around the network layer as well. Throughout the data center, we're going to constantly be monitoring the inbound and outbound network packets and log these. Over time, we're going to start to build up analytics and see what the usual types of traffic patterns are and notice whether there's an anomaly. Now, we do all of this using Cisco Snort, and Cisco Snort is an intrusion detection system that's the leading one on the market as well. Now, one thing that's important to mention is that both the Bitdefender license and the Cisco Snort license are included with your 5.9 license. So you come to 5.9 as your single vendor for setup, for licensing, for support, to try to simplify this and make it an extremely unified security solution. Now, we also do custom network analytics as well, because we find that each customer has different types of traffic patterns based on what type of services or applications they're using. So we're going to go and build up a mapping of what is normal traffic in your data center, just based on different variables, different protocols, different days of the week. And then we'll actually flag if we see anomalies. If a brand new protocol is being used or a particular endpoint is getting hit by a lot more traffic, we will go and alert you and say, despite all of our other security scans, we still find that there's something unusual, something unexpected happening in your environment. So this gives you custom heuristics, custom analytics for your data center. And last but certainly not least, we do all of our logging in syslog, which is a standard login format. This gives us the ability to go and send all of the data that we're collecting to other third-party analytics systems. So if you want to look for different types of identity-related threats or do other types of advanced analysis on the product, we give you the ability to go and hook in to these on-premise or even cloud-based analytics systems as well. Now let's go and take a quick look at the security architecture of how we put all of this together. Now, first thing to note here is that we have a unified installer when we go and set everything up. So again, we want to really try to streamline the process. And so as part of this unified installer, it's going to go and install your management server. It's going to go and give you access to the database that you want to use. And we give you the ability to use SQL Server or any other type of third-party database because we're just using these industry standard logging formats. Now, this also works with SQL Server Express Edition, which is the entirely free version. So you don't have to worry about any additional licensing for your database. We also install the Bitdefender agents. We install the Bitdefender server. And we also install SECaaS Node at this time. So even the installation process is unified with our antivirus and IDS partners. We'll then give you the ability to use different types of management consoles. So you can access and manage all of this data using the traditional 5.9 console, PowerShell, Azure Pack, or even System Center Virtual Machine Manager. Next, once installation is complete, we're going to go and install these agents on each of our hosts. Once the hosts or the clusters are protected, we have our entire working solution. But we want to make sure that we support enterprise scalability. So we have redundancy available for the management server to make sure that it's going to be highly available because you don't want to have a virus be unleashed or a threat be detected and this management server is offline. We provide high availability for the database using SQL clustering. And we also support multiple locations, branch offices, and have a native synchronization mechanism. So you can have as many data centers as you need and still have consistent security and policies across this entire environment. Let's go ahead and switch over to the demo and we'll show you some of this in action. Now, first thing that you see here on the screen is the setup. And this is essentially a single tool that goes and allows you to install all of these different components from a single location, part of our unified installer. What we're now looking at here is the 5.9 Cloud Security Console for Hyper-V. Over here on the left, we have our navigation tree that gives us the ability to go and configure global rules for things such as my firewall. We have the ability to do deep packet inspection as well, where we can go and add rules and do analysis of these packets based on as they come through our system. We have a concept for tenants, where we allow different users to have different sets of policies. We have centralized notifications, where we can see all of the different types of threats and different types of alerts that have come in from all of the different virtual machines across my data center and my environment. And not just for antivirus with Bitdefender, but also other types of internal threats we've detected and different types of firewall alerts too, across all of the different VMs in our environment. Now, as we zoom in and take a look at one of our VMs in particular, we see we have several firewall rules deployed, but we're more interested in the antivirus here. So if I take a look at this particular virtual machine, I see that I have several different types of antivirus jobs. And automation is a key component in a highly virtualized environment. So we give you the ability to go and create jobs that you can run and trigger at all different types of time. We have filtering built in so that you can go and scan the environment and get a better understanding of when a particular threat was found. Down here, you're going to see a list of all of the different types of threats that we've discovered that have been quarantined. And from here, we can say that we want to take it out of quarantine because it's safe, or we can delete the file entirely if we know that it's a threat. We can also do our filtering down here as well to go through the different types of analytics. Now across here, all of these antivirus settings, you're going to see that we have the ability to do a lot of customization as well. So if I take a look at my antivirus settings here, we can see the nodes that we're protecting, and we can go and even configure proxy servers. So this gives you the ability to go and download updates directly from the host or via a proxy server, giving you more flexibility on whether you want to connect your host to the outside world or not. We could configure how often we want to update it and how many simultaneous scans we're going to run, so that even though we have the fastest scans in the industry, we don't want to go and overwhelm a host. So if we take a look at some of the antivirus policies here, we can easily configure which virtual machines are protected or unprotected just using a checkbox in a tree. We could configure advanced settings to see how quickly we're going to go and scan. We can exclude certain files or certain paths if we know that they're safe. We can include or exclude different extensions for the different file types. We can always block particular files or folders so that we can basically set up a local quarantine system on an end user's server. And we can even add allowed threats, basically threats that would normally be detected, quarantined, and flagged. If we know that they're safe, maybe we're using a type of test for development, we can go and specifically exclude that type of threat. So you can see here we have all the core functionality of antivirus built in, and all of this leverages the Bitdefender antivirus engine. Now we also included a plugin for System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So this allows you to go and use a unified console to go and manage all of your virtual security settings. We found that most people are using System Center because they want a single location to manage their virtual infrastructure. So we build in management of security for that virtual infrastructure into this as well, giving people a single location and a similar console experience that they would get with a traditional product. And this is a free add-on for people that are using our core product. Additionally, we have the Azure Pack extension, which allows you to do security as a service. Now, Azure Pack is basically Microsoft Azure's public cloud with the on-premise version. It allows hosters to go and run Azure services inside their own data center, so they get better control over where the services are run and where the data is actually stored, making sure that it doesn't go to one of Microsoft's data centers, but stays within a certain geographic region. Now, as part of this, they want to make security easier for their customers as well. And Five9 Cloud Security is the only self-service security solution available from Microsoft. And using a web-based portal, people can easily go turn on, disable security, turn on their antivirus, their traffic scanning, all of these different settings through a web-based portal to make security easier, where they don't have to go and log into each and every virtual machine, configure firewalls, configure antivirus, configure all of these different policies. They just get to do it through a web-based console. This is going to help hosters also meet more compliance and regulation requirements. Again, one of the big advantages of agentless security is providing separation between the hoster or the service provider admin and the tenants, the people that are consuming the service. Most compliance laws do not let admins actually access their tenant virtual machine, so that the admin can't see patents, medical information, legal information, financial information. And Five9 Cloud Security is the only solution for Hyper-V that allows this to be possible, by allowing separation between the admin and the tenant, and not allowing the admin to go and install security agents, yet still guaranteeing that protection. But probably the biggest advantage that our customers are seeing through self-service is being able to generate new revenue through security as a service. Our licensing model for service providers charges $2.50 per VM per month, yet service providers are now essentially becoming resellers of this service to their customers. And we see our service providers charge $5, $10 a month. In fact, we've signed up some of the largest service providers in the world, and they estimate they're going to make over $100,000 in net new revenue simply by reselling Five9 Cloud Security to their customers. So this is a great way to go and provide a new revenue channel while still guaranteeing better security for your own infrastructure, better security for your tenants, and allowing you to meet more compliance rules and regulations, making you more competitive. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Five9 Cloud Security, we want to point you to our virtual labs, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. We do encourage you to download our 30-day free trial, contact us through our website or through our different channels. Now, as far as the licensing goes, we're consistent with Windows Server and System Center, where we have one license per host for each pair of CPUs that you have. We do have an annual subscription model as well, with multi-year discounts, but most importantly, all of the different security options from for your antivirus and intrusion detection vendors are all built into the license. So you just come to Five9, we handle all of the licensing, the setup, the support, and we pay a royalty to Bitdefender at the end of each quarter. So we handle everything that you need to do. You come to us as your only security solution. Now, we also have a version of Five9 Manager, which is our management product that includes antivirus capabilities from Bitdefender as well. So this gives you centralized management for your entire Hyper-V infrastructure, deploying VMs, creating clusters, things like that, and also includes antivirus from Bitdefender. So if you're an SMB looking for an easier way to manage Hyper-V, certainly check out Five9 Manager with Bitdefender as a great option too. Finally, if you want to get some hands-on experience, Five9 has recently launched our virtual labs. And the virtual labs are fully functional virtual lab environments where you get step-by-step guidance to walk you through different exercises. And you get a real-world, live, running environment that's hosted inside virtual machines in our data center where you can play around, kind of just click on things, free flow, or you can follow some of our step-by-step scenarios to actually complete different security tasks, such as setting up antivirus, doing agentless scans. So here's a great way to evaluate and test the product with about 5 minutes of setup time, and all of that is waiting for the lab to launch. So you don't have to go worry about installing security software, releasing viruses in your own data center to test. You can just use this free evaluation tool. As we wrap up, here's some resources. A great time to take a screenshot of the slide, but again, we'll have everything available through five9.com, and we'll send out a follow-up email with these links as well. And finally, we're now going to go switch it over to the discussion for the last couple of minutes. I'm going to turn it over to George. It looks like we had several questions come in about Bitdefender. So George, why don't you take it away? What's the first question that's come up?
Thank you, Simon. So the first question I have is about ransomware, because the question says that ransomware seems to be now a new prominent threat affecting environments as well, and whether Bitdefender detects ransomware. And I can assure that Bitdefender has good detection for ransomware, and most of the independent tests which I mentioned before also test for ransomware, so you can have confirmation from them as well. So I hope that answers the question, but if you need further follow-up, please feel free to follow us up on that.
That's great, and that's actually a question that I hear a lot as well, George. You know, does Five9 protect from ransomware? And we give the same answer, right? Since we're leveraging the Bitdefender antivirus engine, we're able to detect ransomware just like Bitdefender is. So we are able to protect against that. So long as Bitdefender has the signature or the virus definition, we will also detect that as well. And I'm going to go and ask the next question that I have coming through. And the question that we have here is, can you talk a little bit more about how exactly the licensing works? So I really want to try to emphasize the point here that one of the benefits of working with Five9 is that we're bundling all of these tools and security solutions for virtualization. So you've seen that we have the intrusion detection with Cisco. We have our antivirus with Bitdefender. And again, you just come to us for a single license. We pay royalties to these other organizations. So we're that single point for support, for setup, and for all of your licensing needs. So you only have to speak to us, and we work very closely with the Bitdefender team. So again, licensing, very simple. Just work with us as the single vendor. All right, George, do you have another question that came through there?
Yes, I have one more question which asks, is Bitdefender a traditional signature-only antivirus, and how does it deal with APTs? And it's a very easy question to answer. Bitdefender, of course, is all using signatures internally, but besides that, we have a very good proactive protection and heuristic detection. And in fact, one of the test results I mentioned before explicitly was the proactive protection test, which measures detection of new unknown malware. Regarding APTs, we do not consider it a separate class of malware. It's basically the same threat, which is being adapted and keeps changing keeps to get persistent in a specific environment, and it's hard to remove. But for us, the security vendors, is the same malware as we've seen before, and of course, we detect it as we detected the rest of the malware before. Again, I hope that answers the question.
That was great. Well, that's about enough time, all the time that we have for today. So thank you everybody for attending. We certainly hope that you learned a lot about best practices around virtual security, how managing virtual security should be treated differently, and why Bitdefender is the leading antivirus solution on the market. If you're interested in speaking to us more, certainly please feel free to reach out to George or myself. We'd be more than happy to continue the conversation or answer any additional questions that you may have. Once again, thank you for attending. This concludes the webinar. Goodbye.